Ibra di testa, Tonali, gol! Sandro! Meritato! Sandro! Gol!
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the SempreMilan podcast. I'm your host Ollie Fisher, joined once again by Anthony Talgrud.
What's up, guys? Glad to be back. As you can see, it's just the two of us today. Madison is actually at the hospital, but it's all well. His wife is having a baby right now, so wish him well and comment down below what you think you should name the kid. So that'll be a fun little exercise.
Yeah, get them in. They can be Milan themed or anything. Let's just try to keep it clean, I suppose, because it is a child and all that. But yeah, best wishes to Maddie and his significant other, and fingers crossed we can get him back on maybe next week. We don't know how this is going to work from now because obviously new dad and all that. It's going to be an added dynamic for him, isn't it? But hopefully we can get him on soon and share some updates on how everything is going. But yeah, until then, best wishes to him. And he's had some bad excuses in the past for not being on, but this is one of his better ones. So we'll let him off. And
you guys think he doesn't watch the games now? Just wait. His review is going to be real good.
Yeah, or I don't know, maybe it'll go the other way and he'll use anything as an excuse to get out of. I don't know. We'll see how that goes in the future. We've got a busy episode for the two of us to recap. We've got two games to look back upon and two games to preview that are coming up in the week ahead before we record next week's episode. And to be honest, the two games that we're going to recap couldn't be more polar opposite in terms of how they went for us and how we felt after the game. But rather than doing the usual, chronological of doing both recaps and then both previews, we decided we're going to do the Chelsea back-to-back because it makes the most sense. It'll be an easier transition and stuff like that. And I think we should just dive straight in to the Chelsea review. Yes, so Chelsea away from home, third group stage game of our Champions League campaign at Stamford Bridge under the lights. Myself, Stefano and Lorenzo went to this game. Kind of wish we hadn't.
And Isaac.
And Isaac, he was in the press area for that. And also Doomy, our graphics guy, he was a Chelsea fan. So it was a bit of a squad meet-up for this one. Obviously, one of us was slightly more smug than the rest of the group, but it is what it is. It was still a fantastic experience, regardless of the result, and we will come on to the performance. But it was great to see so many familiar faces in the away end. The Milan clubs of London and Dublin were there. There was a fantastic fan event the night before at Box Park, Wembley, with Nesta and Massaro there. They were signing stuff, taking pictures. I managed to get a photo with the Scudetto trophy. So, it was fantastic. There was a quiz for everyone to get involved with. And then on the day of the game, the pubs were rammed. It was just a general feel-good vibe, Sadly, that didn't extend beyond 8 o'clock as UK time, that is, as things very quickly turned south for us. So I think it's important that we distinguish everything that happened in this Chelsea game, as we're going to try and do here. Everything that happened in this Chelsea game with what we saw on Saturday against Juve. Need to react to this with that being the only context in mind, because we know that a response came 3 days later. I'll open up with a few, maybe these are hot takes, maybe these are lukewarm takes. I don't know. You can be the judge of that. But I wasn't just disappointed. I was angry with how bad we played against Chelsea. I think other people were, fair enough. There was everything leading into the game, like our multiple injury problems. We knew that we were probably 4 or 5 starters short of our lineup, but it was pretty pathetic from start to finish, to be honest. We played right into Chelsea's hands. They let us keep the ball. They knew that we didn't have the quality to break them down. At the other end, they hurt us because we made so many sloppy errors from a defensive point of view, not following runners, allowing too much space on the overloads out wide. They won't have an easier home win this season, apart from arguably maybe Saturday when they beat Wolves 4-0. But for Potter's first Champions League win, it was pretty damn straightforward, and I was quite annoyed about that.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up pretty well. This game was more important to me than any group stage fixture should have been, especially when you're, top of the group and you're playing bottom of the group. You're just like, whatever happens, we're fine, which is still the case. But most of my best friends back home are are diehard Chelsea fans, and this was obviously for me a bragging rights game. You know, it was more important than it was on paper, and it was the worst possible performance I think I've seen since the Atalanta 5-0 defeat in 2019, which led to a signing Ibra and you know changing the game forever. But yeah, this was nothing to be proud about. I mean, look, obviously Liao had a good game, I think, and going into halftime, even though we were down 1-0, we had just missed that chance from Krunic. It was Liao had a great play, passed to CDK, who had a horrible shot, deflected back to Krunic, who then skied it high, it looked like, but then we were given a corner, and on the replay, you could tell it was Chilwell actually got a last-second save, so it was a great save by Chilwell. And then it went into halftime 1-0 down, and I was like, okay, you know, we don't look terrible. We're definitely not the best, given we had nobody at fullback on either side. We had nobody in goal, and we had a center mid as a right wing. So, you know, there was a lot of asterisks on our team, and everyone knew that, even the Chelsea fans, but they were in bad form, and now they're in great form. They've scored 7 goals in their last 2 games, and they've conceded 0, and we started that great run of form for them. So this is not a good look. Obviously, getting Teo back is huge. We got Macias back. Brahim Diaz has obviously found form. We'll get to that. And I believe we'll probably try Kalulu at right back again, which he's significantly better than he was than having Dest. So we do have some formation change, and I think it's actually going to be a lot better for us. Plus, obviously, at home, you know how the away support was. You were there, so you saw. Now they want to come to San Siro and do that, and it's going to be a whole different story. Obviously, this is Chelsea; they're a big club, and they're used to atmospheres like that. But I think that's gonna toy with them a little bit. Pre-game, before it started, you know, I was a guest. I actually used the SempreMilan account for it in a space called the Dugout, which is a Chelsea fan thing where they, you know, interview opposition accounts. They're very level-headed, so shout out to them. But I definitely bigged up the boys, obviously, and now they want me to come back for the return leg, and I got to come up with an excuse.
I was going to say,
like,
have they asked you back on for another bit of jinxing?
Yeah, so I was like, I'll let you know morning of, but I don't know. I might pretend I'm sick or something. We'll see.
You could just go completely flip the narrative and be like, you should trash us 5-0. We're so bad.
Well, you know, and I did say at the end of that, because I was like, look, going into that game, on paper, I think we were the better team. Or overall, I think we're the better team. But given the injuries and given that they had a new manager effect, I was like, I think it's going to really play into your hand. And I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if this was 2-1 Milan, 3-0 Chelsea, 1-1. Like, I gave every possible result, which, you know, the easy way out. But I genuinely didn't know how it was going to go. And unfortunately, I was right with one of those, and it was the worst possible result.
Yeah, I think we were both. I think we both Maddie predicted a win in last week's episode, but I think we were both a bit wary of what could go wrong. And I predicted us to lose. I thought that. Do you know what it was? It was a shame more than anything else, because it feels like every big European tie we've had against a Premier League team, which is how you generally announce yourself in European competitions, is by getting a big scalp. Feels like each time that we've played them, Man United twice in the Europa League, and then obviously Liverpool twice last season, we've had big injuries to key players that has dented our ability to obviously go on and get points and do some damage. And
every single time.
Every time, and that was no exception. And I just thought to myself, we've seen this before, unfortunately, and I feared that it would play out the same way and that we would just look subpar. One thing I will say, was a really good, very solid, competent performance from Chelsea. I was impressed at how organised they were, how difficult they made it for us. Do you know, the big thing that stood out for me is that we had plenty of intent in the opening 15, 20 minutes. They were happy to let us have the ball still, because I think they knew that we couldn't combine speed in our build-up play with quality. And that's the one thing that pretty much every top half Premier League team can do. They're used to playing games at high intensity, but then combining that with quality in the final third. You know, the reason that Chelsea took those 2 opportunities on the counter in the second half to completely kill the game off is because they have the speed and the quality at the same time. We didn't have that. We had one or the other, you know? And it was a bit embarrassing to see that they targeted our left-hand side, which was totally understandable. But the ball stood up by Reece James, and Aubameyang was lost by Tomori. And that's 2-0, and all of a sudden we've got a mountain to climb after what was a pretty scrappy opening goal. And then for 3-0, they just move the ball, bang, bang, bang. Next thing you know, it's over the far side of our box. Reece James has got a fairly easy shot from about 8 yards out that he laces past Tatarashanu. Like, that is the difference. We don't face that week in, week out in Serie A. Teams generally move the ball slow, but with quality, or they move it fast like Atalanta do, but they might waste chances.
Mm-hmm.
It's both with these Premier League teams. You are going to be punished.
I think you're right. However, I don't think it's fair to say we didn't have quality in the end. Obviously, Giroud is pretty exhausted, and I think we're seeing that as a result.
Yeah.
He's definitely dipped in form, and CDK just cannot get it going. Obviously, he's now hurt, as we just found out this morning, so he won't even be playing. But I think Leao was getting the best of, well, all of them. I think Reece James was their best player, and that was because he was up against Ballatore for 90% of the game, and then he's shooting at a guy who's fairly immobile in Tata Rushano. Every single Juventus shot went straight at Tata, and that's why he kept a clean sheet. None of the Chelsea shots did. They all were played to beat the keeper, which is what you should do, and he's just rooted to the spot. That near post goal that Reece James scored for the third one, Maignan saves that every single day. I would argue the Aubameyang one as well. So I don't think they were that much better in reality. I think it really comes down to the lack of depth that we have. That you saw who they brought on, Havertz, Jorginho, players like that, whereas we have to start with our third stringers in already. Like we just don't have the same depth to match them. And I think this next game coming in with Teo's not going to get beat by Reece James every single time. He might get beat once or twice. Reece James is a fantastic right back. I'd argue one of the top 3 in the world right now. But you put him up against Teo and Leao, and now there's some serious problems, and there's going to be more creation. And I think with Brahim, who now has a chip on his shoulder, something to prove, he's not going to have the timidity that we've seen from CDK so far this season. I think you're going to be much better up front. It's probably going to be Giroud again. I think it should be Rebic to start up top, but that extra mobility, it's going to change the game because we are dynamic enough. It's just we didn't have it on the field.
If they have to play Azpilicueta as well instead of Fofana, that instantly makes their back 3 a bit slower. Thiago Silva's 38. And he was outstanding, by the way. If you haven't seen Bidet's video, then go and check it out because he highlighted a couple of things in particular. But we were never, ever going to get a foothold in the game while Giroud was losing every single ball to Thiago Silva. He did not win a ball against him. Thiago Silva's still elite. Like he's still fantastic. And he's going to mop up those strikers that don't move much like Giroud. He'd known exactly how to play him. Also, at the other end, he was a threat from set pieces because we kept sticking Benacer on him when there's about a foot in height difference at least.
Yeah.
And it led to the first goal. And then, you're fighting an uphill battle from there.
That first goal was just a scrappy mess. Obviously, Fofana's injured, and hope him a quick recovery, but that's gone. You don't have to worry about that. I don't know. I don't think Chalobah is going to be like he was full of energy, he's young, whatever, but I don't think he's going to be as big of a threat for the next game. And also, that's another goal that if Maignan's there, he's going to hold on to the second shot. It's not going to get a third shot. So. Yeah, I think this result just looked bad because of who was playing, but it wasn't the champions of Italy, AC Milan, playing. That was that was an injury-ridden B team, C team players. Obviously, we had Leao, the star, the MVP, but one player can't win you a game. It is what it is, and the frustrating thing is, before this game, because Chelsea was in such bad form. You look at the fans, everyone's like, this is a Serie A champions. We got to respect them. This is a tough game for us. I think we're going to lose. And now I'm seeing the most ridiculous shit on Twitter from them. Like, oh, we scored 3. This is a nothing club, Farmers League, all the stuff. And it's like all the excuses they gave themselves for why they might win the first game are now irrelevant. And now it's just like, oh, you lost, shut up. And it's like, bro, you didn't beat anyone. So
that's always going to happen. Twitter, not normally known as a vacuum of common sense, is it? Yeah. But yeah, it was very, very disappointing, very underwhelming, I would say. Perhaps we should have expected it, and a few of us did expect it going into the game, that we would find it difficult without being able to field, essentially 3 of our starting back 5. And unfortunately, players weren't able to step up. And these games are very important for us still. If we'd have gone and played negative anti-football there because of the selection problems that we had, and we'd ground out an awful 0-0 draw or a 1-1 draw or something. It's great for getting a point on the board in the table and for qualification, but I do think sometimes you can be served some quite useful reminders of why we're not yet taken seriously in Europe. Or maybe that's been a bit harsh, but you know what I mean? We haven't made waves yet. We haven't got to the knockout stages and stuff. The depth isn't there. The depth isn't good enough. The depth is good enough to compete and win games, albeit late on, against teams like Empoli and Syria.
What's funny
is not going to ever beat Chelsea.
If we could have just held the scoreline a little bit better, we'd be in a much better position here, because going into that game, we had a +2 goal difference. They had a -1. Now they've completely flip-flopped. So even though we're equal on points, we're now technically third outside of the knockout rounds because of that. Like, I understand people were mad when Pioli was like, made those subs late game to kind of just stop the bleeding. But like, if it's a fourth one, then it doesn't matter what we finish on. We're not going through, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it might have been the right move, but probably would have been the better move if we were to do that at 2-0 or something. But it was, I don't know, with tops and flops. I'm done with it.
Yeah, just a couple more things that I want to mention as well. And this is more from observations. You can pick this stuff up on TV as well, don't get me wrong, because the angle's brilliant and stuff. But something that I noticed being there live, when you really get a feel for the pace and momentum of the way that the game's going, Benacer and particularly Tonali were too slow. Too slow, not in terms of necessarily their actual speed, although Tonali did look quite leggy. Just their speed in getting into tackles, to claiming 50-50 balls, to then distributing the ball forward. They dilly-dallied a lot. There was a few times when they were just kind of dribbling around looking for an option that wasn't there because the players ahead of them were too static. And also was, as kind of touched upon before, our lack of an out ball. When you're trying under pressure, because Chelsea press well, Potter teams do press well. They did press smartly. They let us have the ball, but then they closed us into the right areas. Having a lack of an out ball really killed us, because Giroud wasn't winning anything. That meant that every time we were forced into kicking it into their half, we'd lost possession. And then they were coming at us. Yeah, and in the second half, it became a real problem. A real problem. And the changes didn't have the desired effect off the bench either, because Rebic had put on his steel toe cap boots and he couldn't trap a ball. And Brahim looked bright, and we'll come on to how he looked in the
that's
Juve
another example of why Maignan is so critical to our team. It's not just the fact that he could stop any shot in the world. It's that he builds our attack also. His distribution is perfect. He's got multiple assists over the last 2 seasons. And then you get a guy like Tatarusanu in there who, every time he kicks the ball long, it's going to a Chelsea player, or it's going to Giroud, who's heading it first time to a Chelsea player. And it was just like, there was no attack ever. The only time we had one was if Leao created something from the 50-yard line and ran in and then crossed it to nobody, because nobody else was quick enough to catch up and get there to help. So it was just a frustrating game to watch from start to finish.
It was, and this is just another aside point that I picked up from being there, where you can sort of see the entire pitch at once and you can see who's occupying what zones. Kovacic and Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who arguably isn't even a natural central midfielder. He's been playing there a fair bit recently, but he kind of started as an attacking midfielder winger. Those two would have walked into our team. Like, they're better than both Benacer and Tonali. Like, to me, the gap in quality was absolutely obvious. But then you've got to factor in the context with Benacer and Tonali, where they've got players to their left and right that they're not used to playing with, and they've got no help ahead of them, and behind them the centre-backs are making mistakes. So, I do factor that in. But yeah, I thought we lost the game in all departments. Chalk it off, tops and flops. Flop for me. I ranted about him all game.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this, but we could have probably picked one full-back each for this. And
I think that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll start with Serginho Dest. Just wasn't there at all. He wasn't. He didn't know when to time his runs going forward. He didn't know when to track his man going back. He had no chemistry with the players around him, which is not entirely his fault, don't get me wrong. But he looks really rusty. And by rusty, I mean kind of like he's won a competition to play for us rusty. It wasn't good. It wasn't pretty. And I know that there were a couple of guys in our chat during the game who were defending him, saying he's not been that bad, but then he got worse as the game went on.
Yeah.
And it was really bad by the end of the game. And it's like, you've got to get him off to protect him.
Yeah, and I do think the chemistry was the biggest issue with Dest because all of them. Benacer was really a victim of this new system because Benacer could not find Dest because he's used to where Calabria is, and he couldn't find Krunic because Krunic is a midfielder. He shouldn't be on the wing anyway. So he couldn't find anything, and then because Dest doesn't know either of them, he can't receive, he can't find them, and same with Krunic because the exact same reasons, out of position, different people, like. So that whole right side was just a disaster. It's shocking that honestly all Chelsea's attacks came from the left because they could have probably scored 4 more if they went down the right. It was just bad. I do think Dest was a little hard done because of that. However, I mean, the dude thought he had a free kick when we were just randomly in possession. I watched it live. I don't know if you were there and heard like whistles in the stadium. I don't know what he thought he heard or saw.
No, I think what happened is he thought that... So there was someone whistling in the away end with an actual whistle, and it was really off-putting. But I think he thought that because everyone had stopped, something had been given as a free kick, and then the ball was rolled to him so slowly that he's clearly put his hand on it, ready to take the free kick, not realising the ball had already been played. So, look, it didn't end up costing a goal or anything, but little things like that where you think you're not switched on.
No, exactly. Like how are you not paying attention to the game? And I get when you're 3-0 down, like you do kind of turn off and just accept defeat, but you can't be doing that, And people said like, oh, he came from Barcelona, but he didn't play a whole lot. He played a few times, didn't play a whole lot. And I think to give him his 2 starts in Champions League games against Chelsea is a little rough. But all that said, I'm gonna pick Ballatore because he simply was the fullback that got beat for all 3 goals.
Yeah, pretty grim. I mean, I was so frustrated at the time of that second goal because it was at the other end of the stadium to us, but you can perfectly see the space that James had to cross it. Ballatore was torn between trying to stand and block the cross coming in at the near post, when really the obvious thing to do was to run out and put pressure on him, so he wasn't able to stop, take 3 seconds to place his cross. And that's why
Tomori looked so bad, because Ballatore just couldn't do it. So Tomori had to go everywhere to cover. He's already mad because he's playing his old club. Like it was a recipe for everyone to look bad.
And it happened. Yeah. Player of the match, pretty straightforward in terms of the starters, isn't it? Leao was the only one who looked like he wanted to do anything. He went on 2 really good runs. His first one caused havoc. He just knocked it past his man and went surging. And then that chance that he created before halftime really should have been an assist. I guess you'll probably pick the same.
Yeah, exact same reasons.
I'll give Brahim a shout out off the bench as well. He looked like one of the only players who wanted to hang on to the ball and drive forward. And just another thing, while I'm on a rant about how bad things were, Pioli kind of said after the game, or in the build-up to the Juve game, that he didn't tell Krunic to play as a right winger. He was told to play as kind of more of a right midfielder and tuck in. I didn't see that. Whether the instructions had got confused or whatever, I saw Rade Krunic looking clueless out on the right wing. So clearly something was lost along the way there, because CDK was not playing out on the right. He was playing on the 10, drifting more towards the left, misplaced several key pass opportunities. He was another one who looked a bit off the pace to me, and by a bit, I mean, like, I think he was as bad as Chelsea fans think Havertz is. Like, it just wasn't there at all. But we got a chance to put things right. So let's be more positive in view of what's happened on Saturday night. We've got a new formation now, it seems, and we've lost another player because CDK has had a muscle strain and he's likely to miss the next 2 games. What can we do differently? What do we do? What do we do to stop Chelsea? Now, my gut feeling on this is that Chelsea are going to come and be even more pragmatic and more cautious because they've got the win over us. And if we're tied on points, it goes on head-to-head. So they'll probably be backing themselves to finish above us now. They might come for a draw and know that they can hurt us on the counter at the other end. And that's kind of how I see them playing, is more tentative and sucking us into traps.
I agree with you completely. And I think that's going to play into our favor, actually, with Leao. Because if Reece James isn't getting as forward as much, then Leao's going to be able to beat him. He was doing it on defense anyways. And then you add in Teo in that dynamic, we're actually going to have build-up play. And I think we're at home, so the midfield's going to be more settled with Klulu out wide. Benacer's going to have someone he knows. I don't know who's going to play right wing, but it's should be fine with anyone. Well, do we think it's going to be Macias? Is he back for this one? We
No.
don't know, right?
He apparently trained on his own today, so I think he was referring to coming back for the game at the weekend.
Sunday, yeah.
In which case he probably wouldn't start anyway because he wouldn't be fit enough to start. So it's going to be Brahim who starts as the right winger in inverted
So then
commas.
Krunic as the 10, probably. Oh, it'll be a 4-3-3. So Krunic just
Yeah.
be in midfield.
Yeah, Krunic fielded as the 10. Or Pabega. I mean, I would play Krunic because I think he's probably a bit more resourceful and a bit tidier technically. And I think in a game like that, it can make a
Pobega's
difference.
slow
And a bit awkward, a bit clumsy, a bit.
But he does
cumbersome.
have a bit more physicality, which is why Pioli started him against Juventus. So maybe we go with the exact same lineup.
Maybe,
you know,
maybe don't fix what isn't broken. Obviously,
the only issue is that Juventus side is significantly slower, discombobulated, uninterested. Chelsea's not.
Yeah. This is going to be tough. This is why it is really difficult because we've just had a massive morale boosting win against Juve on Saturday, and it came after such a demoralising and kind of damaging defeat in our Champions League hopes, but also in terms of where we think that we're at as a club and our depth and everything. And I think everyone's on cloud nine now thinking, let's get revenge, let's get stuck into them from the off. And I don't see anything other than another defeat without wanting to be negative. I just think they're better than us at the moment and they can field a better starting 11. And I'm not sure that the second game of playing a 4-3-3 is going to bring the same desired results because they also pack out the midfield and they also play with, with good wide options like we're hoping to rest our hopes on. I think it's going to be another tough examination. I mean, you've got to factor in as well that Chelsea made, I think, 6 or 7 changes at the weekend, and they absolutely blitzed past Wolves 4-0. So they've had as good a weekend as any in terms of conserving energy and making sure key players are fit. It sounds like Ziyech, Kante, and I can't remember the other player now. No, it's
Havertz,
gone.
Havertz, Jorginho.
No, it might be Jorginho. Are probably going to miss this one, but that's nobody who started the game last Wednesday night, so it could be pretty difficult. And yeah, I mean that means that they're able to field Bar Fofana, who's out with I think some ligament problems, so it's going to be a couple of months. They'll be able to field pretty strong starting 11 again. Thiago Silva will be back in there. Pioliball, I guess, because he knows the stadium and he knows the opponents well. Whether it be Azpilicueta or Chalobah, I don't know. But Reece James, Chilwell, Kovacic, Mount, Sterling, Aubameyang, like those, that's enough players to cause us problems. And I think with the defeat last Wednesday, they're able to be even more organised.
I'm curious to see how Gabia does against Aubameyang because he did super well against Vlahovic, which I didn't expect. But again, the whole Juve midfield was just slow and not there, whereas Aubameyang's a very fast man, so that'll be interesting. To me, the real question mark is it's not even a question mark. The only downside is Tatarusanu instead of Maignan. I think Magnan's just too important in every facet of our game, attack and defense. That's a huge miss. But other than that, I think this lineup is going to be much better suited to take on Chelsea. So I'm not expecting as bad a defeat. If we are defeated, I think we at least get a goal this time around.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think the first goal, it's cliche in football, isn't it? But I think the first goal is massive because if we go behind, it is really tough then because they're able to do everything that they like to do in a better situation and the pressure is all on us then to respond. But if we go goal up, maybe we'll see them a bit more shaky.
If we are up, we could hold back whatever. I don't think we would do that. I think we always concede when we try to just set in.
Yeah, we do.
But we'd have to beat them by 4 to get the head-to-head over them, So we're not going to have that. There's no chance we beat them by 4. So is it a matter of just play for the win and then hold on to whatever lead you have and hope that they stumble against one of the other two teams, And that's how we top the group, or just aim for second. Like I don't know what the end game is now, but this definitely put us in a lot tougher spot than it needed to.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, just avoiding defeat would have been absolutely massive. But we are where we are. I mean, two of our last 3 games in the group stage are at home. One of them's against Salzburg, and that is looking more and more already like it could be a crucial game. We kind of got a hope for a favour from Dinamo, but we can't expect one because they're looking pretty much dead and buried already. Well, not dead and buried, but they're the least favourites to progress, and one more defeat is probably a nail in their coffin. So let's presume that Salzburg win and we don't win. All of a sudden, things look pretty difficult, and that Salzburg game will become a must-win in addition to having to win. We might be hoping for a favour from Chelsea, If they win, then they've got 1 foot in, really, because we still have to play Salzburg, and they've got Dinamo, so they'll pick up 3 points there, you would presume. Yeah. There's a lot of group dynamics that will change after this round of games. I don't know if we find ourselves third going into those last 2 games, and there's a points gap. Fans might start to get a bit on edge about us qualifying, and then it'd be interesting to see what the narrative is about our group being easy. Prediction. I really, really want to be optimistic and say that we win this one 1-0 or 2-1, something like that, and it is the perfect full circle response. This will actually today, the day that we're recording, is 3 years exactly since Pioli took charge. And when you look at the cycle, his first game was a 2-2 home draw against Lecce, and that was an incredibly frustrating game. To then a 2-0 win against Juve after we've played Chelsea in the Champions League. And it's like, what an incredible journey we've been on with him. It would be lovely to mark the start of the 4th year with another big statement win. 0-2. I think Chelsea beat us again. I'm sorry, I do. I hope to be wrong. I really hope to be wrong, but I just look at things as they are and what happened on Wednesday night and think they can probably do that again.
Yeah, I think they can, but I'm still going to say 2-1 us. I think Teo back is a huge boost. I think Klulu at right back's a big boost. I think Brahim Diaz is in the best form he's been since, I don't remember, out of the first 3 months that he signed with us, something like that. I don't know. I'm optimistic. However, don't put a bet on what I just said.
Don't be a bet. Yeah. It's a tough one to call. I mean, I looked at the odds actually because I was interested to see how the bookmakers have it, and there isn't much in it. But Chelsea are slight favourites to win the game if there is to be a result, which perhaps isn't surprising. You know what happened on Wednesday night, but 75,000 fans, we've got to make it a cauldron. We've got to make it horrible for Chelsea to play in. And as I say, that's why the first goal could be crucial. If we get a goal and we get right on their backs, we'll see what a Potter team is made of. One that hasn't actually gone behind in a game yet, I don't think, as well. Fingers crossed for a memorable night at San Siro. And speaking of memorable nights at San Siro. So the defeat against Chelsea gave us an impetus to respond against Juventus on Saturday. We'd mentioned on last week's episode that Juve have had a up and down and generally more downs than ups kind of season so far. Some fans wanting Allegri fired because even when they're winning, the football's just not been brilliant. We kind of saw that, I'll be totally honest. But they did come into the game off the back of a 3-0 home win against Bologna and win in the Champions League against Maccabi Haifa as well, which kind of boosted their qualification hopes for a little bit. So, and also they didn't have too many key injuries either. So the conditions were there for this to be a tough game. A tough game it was not. By the opening 10-15 minutes, I would say we started pretty nervous. But then we grew. Well, they had a couple of chances. Cuadrado dragged that shot wide. We were a bit sloppy in those opening exchanges. We gave the ball away quite a lot. Once we settled into the game, it did feel like it was just a matter of time before we scored. And then I'd never really backed them to score. It was weird.
So the Chelsea game started. From moment one, I was nervous, a little shaky, And from moment one in Juve game, I was lounging, chilling, didn't care. It never fazed me. I was never nervous in this game, and we scored a corner kick. We don't score corners, and then Brahim scores one of the best goals I've seen. That was an incredible solo goal. Unless you want to count the Vlahovic assist on there, but it was routine. It was genuinely light work. Every shot they had was straight at Tatarushanu or so far wide nobody even had to move. And I'll be honest, after the Brahim goal, I think that was like the 67th minute, something like that.
Yeah,
Around
it
that
was
time.
just around the hour mark maybe.
Yeah, I spent the good majority of the rest of the game just talking shit on Twitter. Like I didn't even feel the need to focus on the game, which is not a great thing to admit as a podcast host, but I was just so comfortable with the result. I knew it wasn't changing unless we were to get a third. That was the only thing that I thought may happen. But it was such a routine, easy game. It was Pioli's first ever win over Allegri. And I'm shocked to even hear that because they played awful. Like if this is Allegri's best squad, which I don't think it ever was. No one's ever been arguing that. Juve's had much better teams, but I just don't think this was ever anything to worry about. Granted, yes, Di Maria was out, who's been a revelation for them, and Pogba still hasn't made it his first appearance, so we don't know how he's going to play. But it was. I mean, they played a beer in midfield, and like they had Moretti. Do they have Nicky Beans? Is he still on their team? Like
Miretti, yeah. He came off the bench after like 10 minutes of the second. In fact, we scored about 10 minutes into the second half, and that prompted them into a couple of changes. And Miretti came on and actually looked all right. He
looked fine, but
he was the only one who looked like he had any technical ability at all, aside from maybe Kostic.
You know what? We would have had a third, but Bremer actually took a hard ball to the face and deflected it back. But we were wide open on a counter with Leao, and we long balled it over, and it just hit Bremer square in the nose. So
we honestly
good defense, unintentional.
The one takeaway that I had from this game was it was almost like a missed opportunity because we had the chances to make it 4 or 5-0. And I think that would have been that would have caused a serious crisis at Juve.
One thing I will say is, and it's kind of unrelated to the game, but Bonucci got a concussion. Like he was down and out after getting hit in the head hard, and he was lied down for a few minutes and then played the full 90. And I know Serie A doesn't have like a concussion protocol like the NFL does, but for the safety of the players, you should have taken him off. And maybe we don't score the second goal if you do, because he literally stood still when Brahim ran past him. And but like for his safety and his health, that was a hard hit. He probably should have came off.
Yeah.
And we'll see if he needs to sit out a little bit, but that was rough.
Yeah. And for as much as I'd love to spend time talking about how good we were, we were good, don't get me wrong. I think we pressed well as a unit. I think we looked far better with Kalulu at right back, Gabia centre back, Tomori, rather than having Dest. And then obviously Teo kind of balanced out the attacking flanks, and we did look far more effective for that. I think playing the midfield three was certainly good as well. That freed up space for Brahim to kind of drift wide when he wanted to, and also then allowed Leao to play a bit as an inside forward when the situation dictated. It was all good, but I do think that we missed chances. We still missed chances, especially in the second half. Ariki goes through. That should have been 3-0. We got the one where Teo beat Szczesny to the ball and he goes for goal, I think, or he's trying to dink it over somehow, and he really should have found his man there. It wasn't a perfect performance from us by any means, but I don't think it had to be. I mean, I'm looking at Juve's team here. I mean, Szczesny, as we know, is probably still a top 5 goalkeeper in the league. I don't think he could have done an awful lot about. I mean, he got up to the second goal, but that goal's not primarily on him. It's on the giveaway and on the defenders moving out of the way. And then you've got Danilo and Alexandro, who just looked awful compared to Kalulu and Teo. It's remarkable, really, how good Kalulu and Teo came out of that game, as the respective fullbacks. But Bremer and Bonucci, when he's not had a knock in the head, should be okay as a pairing. That should be a functional centre-back pairing.
I don't think Bremer's been that good for them. And I thought he was going to take a while to adapt because he came from a 3-at-the-back system, and we saw that in their first few games. But then he seemed to find form. But now it seems like he's lost it again. So I don't know. I think it's just first season growing pains with a new club for him, to be honest. And maybe next season he'll be a lot better if he's around, because, I mean, financially, Juve is starting to crumble, and you look at their stadium, they get like 15,000 fans a game now. It's pathetic. Even on Champions League nights, like it's really bad. And you could tell how many of those 9-time consecutive championship fans were bandwagoning, because they're all gone now. Every single one's vanished.
They're a mess. I think you can probably pin a lot of their issues on the midfield too. Like why he thinks Locatelli Rabiot is going to work, I don't know. I really
Rabiot's
don't
been
know.
one of their better players, actually.
He has, but I don't think he can do it in a 2. You know, it's not
This
even
was
a
the
double
first
pivot.
time Juve's ever lost with Rabiot on the field. It's also
really?
the first time that they went. I think the first time they've ever conceded more than 2 goals with him on the field, also, or more than 1 goal. Sorry,
My Monco, yeah. I just don't think it works as a flat 2, especially without a playmaker ahead of them. You know, they just got spun around so much. Locatelli outshone by Tonali. I thought Tonali was brilliant. Tomori was brilliant. Those two had bounce back games after their struggles. Kostic and Cuadrado, I ended up feeling a bit sorry for them because they never really got the ball in dangerous wide areas much after the opening 5-10 minutes where they looked to have us a little bit on the back foot. And then Vlahovic and Milik, it's so strange. Look, it worked against Bologna, don't get me wrong. They each scored in a 3-0 win, but they seem really similar to me. Like, I don't really understand what they're going for with both of them up front. To be honest, Moise Kean came off the bench, and although he was wasteful, he missed chances. He looked like he should be partnered with one of them instead.
yeah,
because
they're different type of exactly.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I really like Milik, and I'd love him to be our backup striker, for example, because he's reliable, he gives you games, he gives you goals. And Vlahovic is still very good, don't get me wrong. He's five goals this season in the league. He's their top scorer, and he is good. But yeah, I just found it strange that they paired them together because they seem to be treading on each other's shoes a little bit, and neither of them knew which player to target either. You know?
It seemed like they kept trying to occupy the same bit of ground as well, which was just getting in each other's way. And that shows you how similar they are in profile. And a guy like Moise Kean off the bench should have been starting because he's going to be that more mobile, dynamic striker, a la Rebic versus Giroud, who is, a shell compared to Vlahovic, but more similar to that vein. So it really was weird. But speaking of Vlahovic, there was an incident that we should probably discuss there. I think it was a penalty. I'll be honest with you. You got your hand like this, and that's close to your body. Obviously, it's still sticking out, make yourself wide, but, benefit of doubt, this is not a penalty. Now, this to block a ball and butting it out with your elbow, how is that not a penalty? The intent is to make yourself bigger and hit the ball and redirect play with your arm. That is a penalty.
He lunged at the ball like it was blatant. You could see it on whatever replay, real time, slow mo. Our players were shouting for it. As you rightly said there, he made himself bigger, and that's what, by the definition of the rule, you are not allowed to do. I think if it had just hit him as he was, or even if he's trying to tuck his elbow in, absolutely fine. But the fact that he kind of almost plants his elbow on it to block it, and who knows where the ball might have gone there.
And the intent was to hit the ball. Like it wasn't like he stepped into it and was like, "Oh shit, my arm is out." No, he elbowed it. He
knows what he's doing. Yeah, we've all played football well,
and he got away with it.
He did get away with it. And I mean, thankfully, it didn't cost us in the end. That's all I can say. But I mean, it was good. It was a professional win. We said last week, I think my exact words were, "I don't fear this Juventus team anymore," and I think you can see why they're behind us. We play a far more modern style of football. It overwhelmed them. We're not absolutely stocked full of quality at the moment because of our injuries, but we've got enough to beat them and look pretty bloody comfortable while doing it. I mean, we brought Astor Franks, brought I think like 9th, 8th.
Yeah.
We brought Astor Franks on and he was rouletting past Paredes. We had Matteo Gabbia winding up for shots from 25 yards. When you do that, you know something's gone wrong. It was nice. And it was good.
I think that's also a part of that is why Origi took his shot and why Teo took his shot, because it was a training clinic against these guys. And had it have been 2-1 at that moment,
you pick your
both of them are playing that across to Leao, who was open on both of them. Leao could have had a brace.
I think it was Rebic for the Origi one, because Rebic was screaming at him.
Yeah, and he threw his hands. Yeah, so it was Rebic
and that was right
for that one, and Leao for the other one. And both of those should have been goals from them, but I understand why the other players took it first time. Origi having 0 goals this season, he really needs one. Teo's Teo, he wants one. That's what else are you gonna say? But
Oh, if that
Yeah.
had nestled in as well, that'd have been gorgeous because he'd have
Oh,
whipped it all the way into the far inside netting. It is what it is. Like I say, that's my one big disappointing takeaway from it all is that it really could have been a proper bloodbath, you know. And 2-0 doesn't actually look like as much of an outclassing as what it was. But I'm happy. It was a good response, good performance. Right, Hellas Verona, and then we'll just do a couple of questions. Appreciate it's an action-packed episode this week with so much game action going on. You'll be pleased to know, actually, that we actually have, I think it's after we play on Sunday against Hellas Verona, we have a few days off. We don't have a midweek game next week. So we can take a little bit more time to dive into the games. Hellas Verona have sacked their coach, I believe, or they're about to. Have they done it officially?
I thought that's what I saw, and
Schioffi.
no, I was thinking of Spezia because they just announced De Rossi as.
I tell you what would be interesting.
Or was that Spal? I can't remember who.
Could be both. Spal is Serie B now, so it must have been Spezia. I'll tell you what would be interesting is to look at how many managers have been in Serie A since Pioli was appointed 3 years ago. My guess is that some clubs have been through 3 or 4 managers.
It was Spal for De Rossi.
Oh, right, yeah. Some clubs have been through like maybe more than that, 6 or 7 managers. Some clubs have had 1 or 2, but it feels like we've been the one constant. Has everyone else changed coach apart from us? I guess they probably have.
I think so. I think every single team, yeah.
Continuity is key.
Gasparini.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Good shout. And see, that's, it's proven to be a good decision to stick around with him. Hellas Verona are in the bottom 3. Now, I had them as being an unpredictable package this season because they've got some good players on paper, but they have also overachieved, I think, in like 2 of the last 5 seasons. They've managed to get into the top half. And they're a big club as well, so they're not going to stand around for any shit. But yeah, they've lost their last 3 as well.
4.
They lost, is it 4 now? Yeah. So, of course, because 4. Salernitana loss is what has tipped things over the edge. So, yeah, they have now lost 6 of their opening 9 games.
Yeah, their only victory is against Giampaolo's Sampdoria, who also got sacked, and they're on 0 wins this season. So, I mean,
I remember watching them in that first game of the season when they lost 5-2 against Napoli. And they were in the game for most of that. And I think they actually took the lead. And then things just fell apart. But you sort of thinking, Napoli are probably going to be, a bit of an unknown package. But at least Hellas Verona hung in there for some time.
That's how
it's not gone well.
Cremonese went over the weekend too.
Actually,
it was 1-1, and then I saw it was 2-1. I turned it on, and it was like the 81st minute. They scored a third, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna turn this off. And all of a sudden, I get an update full time 4-1. I'm like, how did this happen? Like, that's a game that last season they would have lost or drawn.
Yeah, they were all in the second half of this season. They might hopefully lose, when things start to. I don't know. Like Hellas Verona, they don't necessarily have them a massively different team on paper. They've still got Gunter at. In fact, let me get up what the team was for their last game, the one that ended up tipping them over the edge. I honestly don't think that they're going to have a new manager in place by the time that they play us. They could do, but this is an appointment that they really need to get right.
If they have one, it's not going to be anyone to like really write home about, because who looks at that and says like, that's where I want to be, Hellas Verona. That's able to immediately turn them around. You might have new manager effect for a little bit, but overall, I mean, this is a team in disarray. Yeah, so
Ceccherini got sent off in the last game, so that's one of their centre-backs out for this. They have Montipo in goal, Isaac Hien, Corey Gunter, and then I don't know who will actually come in at centre-back to fill in. It could be Cabal, maybe, something like that. De Pauli was right wing back. Deutsch was left wing back. Veloso and Tameze. Adrian Tameze was the player that we were linked with over the summer for the central midfield role. Simone Verde, who we know. Hrustic, and then Thomas Henry up front. They are missing
off the bench.
Yeah, they're missing some players. I mean, Faraoni is good. Milan Juric we know him. He was actually at Salernitana last season, wasn't he? Because he scored against us.
Sounds right.
Yeah. And but they're missing players like Barak, who obviously left in the summer, Zakanyi. They were key players before. And look, it feels like trips to face Hellas Verona are never that straightforward. We went a goal down last season in the Scudetto running, but came back to win 2-1, which was good. But we've also had weird games like the Krunic and Dallo show when we won 2-0, despite having Castillejo as a centre forward. So I don't know. This could. We should win. We really should win if we're a serious team. And then we've got a week off, so the incentive has to be: let's get a result against Chelsea, win against Verona to make sure that we're still in and around. Then enjoy a couple of days off, boys, and we'll pick it back up for Monza at home, which is another game that hopefully we can kind of manage our energy.
It's funny that we're saying we get a couple of days off, and yet it's still less than a week between the games. It's just
feels great though. Feel like
2 days. It's
like a holiday.
Is this Verona game the last game that Mignon is expected to miss, or will he also miss Monza?
No, him and Chiera are expected to come back for Monza, and we should have Macias back for this one as well. And yeah, I mean that's it then. The other players that are out until 2023. So can't imagine anything radical changes with CDK. Should hopefully be back for this
he'll
one.
be back as well. Yeah,
hopefully. But we'll see, because Pioli suggested that he might actually miss it. But fingers crossed, he's just doing a bit of mind games. Prediction, I'm going to go 3-1 win.
Yeah, I'm going to say 3-0.
Fingers crossed we're right on that one. That's all I'll say. And be interesting to see who Verona appoint next. Right, let's do a couple of questions then. We won't get through all of them because of the time that we're on at the moment. Abhijit Mohana asks, which player compared to last season has progressed the most and which has regressed the most?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
Good cue, because it can't be someone that's arrived in the summer. It has to be that we have something to compare them with.
So I'm going to say regressed. Well, I don't, and this is a bit harsh, but I think Giroud, I think he started off very strong this season, but his drop off over the last 2, 3, 4 games, or however many it's been since his last goal. I think, was it the Derby the last time he scored? Maybe he scored right after that.
Champions League against Sal.
No,
Dinamo.
Did he score in the Champions League? Okay.
Yeah, the penalty before half time when Real got.
Yeah. I think his drop off has been pretty steep, and it's probably because he's on, I don't know, going into last season like 18 games straight of starting. Like the dude needs a rest. He's an old man. He just turned 36. Like, nothing but respect to him. I'm a big fan, but I do think he's starting to show a decline recently, and maybe it's just fitness. But I guess that's the regression, I would say. As far as improvement, that's tough, because I think our players that have, I don't know, I think everyone's right around the same level of improvement. I don't think anyone has had a standout improvement. I mean, unless you want to say Brahim, but it's like one game,
Yeah. I think regression, and this is harsh because I'm not saying that he's regressed to being anything other than what he is. But I just think he's made some errors early this season that were not there at the back end of last season, and that's Tomori. But I don't think he's regressed to being an average player. I think he's still a fantastic player who just had a little bad run of form. He's been questionable on a couple of the goals that we've conceded. The defense as a unit just hasn't been as solid so far. And then improvement, I'm going to say Benacer, even though I kind of said against Chelsea wasn't all there, was a bit passive. I think Benacer has stepped up, given that he's no longer fighting for a spot with Kessie anymore, and he's looked really good. But again, I want to stress that I'm not saying he was bad before. I think he was very good before, but now he's just taken a couple of steps forward, which is good to see.
Yeah. Do we think Leao is still at the same level that he was last season, MVP level, or do we think he's improved upon that, given he's on, I think, 8 goal involvements already this season, or 9 or something like that?
Oh, I think it might be more. I think it's 11. He's got 4 goals, 7 assists in all comps.
There you go.
So yeah, I honestly, with Leao as well, it's weird. He seems to go in bursts of goals then assists. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple of goals that come up because he's been the supplier a fair bit.
And that's such an indication of a complete player, because how many times do we see a goal scoring machine or a guy who just is a playmaker and nothing else? it's rare you see the complete package of both. And a player of his caliber who just became MVP to still be selfless enough to give those assists instead of taking it on his own. Not to say he doesn't. He does play a lot of hero ball, but he also recognizes when the pass is there and when it needs to be taken. So I think that's a big boost as well that you don't see from some of the other top guys. Like Ronaldo has always been known to be kind of a ball hog. You know, it's nice to see that level ability, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. The scary thing is the potential. Like, where could it go? You know, is there another level to unlock? We got a couple of questions about Gabia from Rocky Ward and Hassan Abu Jeri saying about. Well, Rocky Ward asks, does Gabia offer enough of the qualities we hope to get out of Botman? And then the other part of the question was, always believed in Gabia and thinks that he needs playing time, could be a good partner for Kalulu and Tomori. Probably pump the brakes a little bit on the Botman stuff. You know, with Botman there, you're talking about a player who's settled in quite well into the Premier League and he's a 35, 40 million euro player and he's a Dutch international and everything that comes with it. Those comparisons are a little bit, I think, a bit premature, but I see some similarities. And what I really liked about Gabia against Vlahovic was that he wasn't scared about bullying him. Vlahovic was probably thinking, who's this? You know, I remember playing against Gabia for Fiorentina and I rinsed him. And Gabia was climbing all over him at times to win headers and stuff. But Vlahovic is a forward who relies on establishing a presence and being a bit of a bully himself. So if you get to it first, all it did was wind him up. And he ended up having to drop deeper and deeper. And that's when he started giving the ball away. And that led to the second goal. So Gabia was really good. And I've been on his train for a while.
You have. And I haven't. So this is a bit of, you know, eating my shoe moment because I do think he is a good move. One thing that we've lacked in defense for a long time is an aerial presence. And we did see that against Juventus with Gabia, you know, specifically jumping on the shoulders of Vlahovic time and time again. When he came on against Chelsea, obviously they were up 3-0 and weren't attacking a whole lot, but very few things got past him. You know, it's not like he was shutting them down, but he was doing significantly better than when Kalulu was a center back, you know, and I think Kalulu ended up getting shifted out or something, or we played 3 at the back. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I would pick Gabia as a third choice center back over Kier.
I think you kind of have to at this point. Like, he's the future. He's still only 23.
And that's something people forget because he's been on our team for years.
Yeah. And another thing that I think is interesting is that we signed a player who's highly rated in Germany, Malik Chow, obviously German under-21 international, was starting games for a Bundesliga team. And he's found himself bottom of the pile in terms of centre-backs. We know Pioli likes his favourites, the players that he knows, the players he's had time to work with. But for Gabia to be quite comfortably above him, obviously Chow's not in the Champions League squad list, but for the Juve game, for example, for him to say, I'm backing you to stop Vlahovic, that was a big statement, and he completely repaid his faith. He never moaned about being about 1.93 or something. He's tall. He's a lanky frame, but he's kind of broad as well.
Yeah, it's just shy of 6 foot.
I just wonder if moving forward, Pioli is already thinking about that. Teo, Tomori, and then whoever steps up out of Gabia and Chow and Kalulu as a right back, because Kalulu still, to me, looks an absolute natural at right back. I said to you, I think it was in the chat maybe, but I get Kyle Walker vibes from Kalulu at right back, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a good way because of how he plays for City and how he plays for England when England are good. He has the pace and athleticism to stop just about anybody. But
Kalulu's
also
speed is so underrated. You never hear people talk about how fast Kalulu is, but he pushes forward so far, and anytime the ball gets past him, he's right there recovering no matter how far away it is. He gets back to it. And then he wins the sliding challenge at the last second 9 times out of 10. I mean, he actually is a fantastic defender. Incredible.
Yeah, it was sensational defending, like art of defending stuff. But then also we know that Teo's so attacking. Kalulu is more than happy to slot in and round and form a back three for when that needs to happen, or even stand in and cover if Tomori's gone out to follow a striker. It just makes us look so much more solid with that as a back four. And I hope that continues against Chelsea because, look, I'm not getting ahead of myself. I think Aubameyang would be too much for Gabia to handle. He's fast. His movements are far too clever. You don't get anything like that from a striker in Serie A at the moment, barring maybe a couple. I think that would be a really tough examination for him. I hope we kind of see it, and I hope it's Tomori's job more so. But that'll be a real examination. But in terms of in Serie A, it'll work. You know, that back four will work. It will win us games. And yeah, up the Gabia. My agenda lives on. Our agenda lives on as well, by the way, of Brahim looking better out on the right.
Yeah, we've been touting that horn, and we finally got a little recognition on Twitter about it. So, because it worked very well.
It did, yeah. Well, look, even though he maybe didn't play as an out-and-out right winger, the point was he didn't play as a 10, and he wasn't trapped into this role of having to occupy the space between the lines and stuff. So I said that entire right side of the field is yours to attack, just roam into the space. And he looked better for it, you know. And he showed good awareness to nip in and get the ball and score. Rohit asks, should Milan change formations to subvert the right wing crisis? I mean, since we kind of touched on it there, I think we did a bit in the Juve game. You could see that when we weren't in possession of the ball, we certainly moved a bit more compact, and Pobega was helping out more from a defensive standpoint. Brahim was more on the right, it would be fair to say, and then Pobega was playing as like a number 10. But there was a lot of shape shifting, like a lot of players. There was Teo pushing into midfield at times. And then there was late runs coming from the midfielders too, to make it like a 4-1-4-1 at certain points. And look, we know that formation is just to make it look pretty on paper with us. That's literally it, because when it's in a game, we react to situations, and you'll look up and Teo's playing right wing, chasing a ball down that he should have then scored from, and Leao's moved over to the right hand side to pick up a ball to set up Reb. Like we're mental, like we're very unpredictable. But Pioli did say in his press conference ahead of the Chelsea game that he's got something up his sleeve for the game. So watch us lose 4-0 now. Cheers. Final question, because he has been discussed a fair bit. Christian Espinoza. I'm fascinated with Xhaka Traore, but I haven't seen him play much other than YouTube clips. Do you think he'd be a better option at right wing than Salamakers and Macias? Not at the moment for me. I understand why people are hyped on this kid. They'll have seen the comps videos and stuff, which are fantastic. And if you ever watch the Primavera, he stands out as being a real live wire. He gets on the ball, he makes things happen, takes his man on. He's like a Leao who can play on the right, but I don't think he's quite ready yet. His decision-making's not there. He's playing against Primavera defences, and he also had an absolute stinker on Saturday against Empoli when we lost, and so did Kubis. Kubis had a disaster class, so I think we just need to slam the brakes on the idea that some of the Primavera players are ready, because unfortunately they're just not yet. Not while we're losing at home to Empoli in the league in Primavera,
Yeah, and it's not even Primavera, isn't it? Under 19s?
No, I mean they call it under 19s. It's the same thing.
I thought under 21 was Primavera.
No, they call it under 19, but obviously you're allowed players that are over 19. But it's confusing. But under 19 does mean.
I know he obviously did play some first team ball for Parma, very little. I don't even know.
Made his debut against us.
Yeah. I don't know if he even scored, and I think that mentally is kind of a weird transition, going from playing Serie A ball to being signed to go to the youth academy for someone else. But obviously, when it's the Serie A champions versus perennial relegation candidates, you take that move.
Yep.
I don't watch any Primavera. I've seen the exact same YouTube clips that Christian has seen, so that's all I got.
Look, there's something there, but it's going to be a couple of years. He needs work. But what I do like about Abate's coaching, from what I've seen so far, is that he's got them playing really wide open and playing at a very, very fast tempo, and at a system that seems pretty similar to what the first team are trying to do. And how many times have we said on here that the sole job of the Primavera is like performance first, results second? Nobody looks and nobody celebrates the Primavera Scudetto that much. Really, it's about how many players are you bringing through that are good enough for the first team and that are used to the style of play. And I hope that is one thing that improves. I mean, in the youth league, we're competing. We're top of the group. Top of a group that has Red Bull Salzburg, who were finalists in the youth league last season, and Chelsea, who are literally a talent factory. So there's something going right in that direction. Just hope it continues. We'll wrap it up here. Thank you very much to everyone if you made it this far. Keep checking out our YouTube channel for more reaction videos from Stefano and Bidet. Be sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to comment a baby name from Maddie as well. Just for fun, if he does take on any of these suggestions, though, I think you should be asking for royalties, don't get me wrong. And yeah, I've been your host, Ollie Fisher. You can find me on Twitter at Ollie Fisher. AJ, thanks for joining.
Yep, Torque45, and that's it.
Yep, thank you for watching, everybody. We'll catch you in a week.
Eccolo Ante in area di rigore, Ante, Ibra, gol! Vediamo se è buono, ce lo dà buono, ce lo dà buono, ce lo dà buono.